Welcome back to to another installment of Ask Eddie and Ann. People can already tell things are different. Ann is in the usual spot, sans felines, and I am downstairs in my house instead of upstairs in my office. And because my back hurts like hell, as I just explained to Ann, and that's how it rolls. How are you feeling, Ann?
I'm doing good. Yeah. Just really happy. We're recording on a Friday night, so I'm done with my work week. So I'm happy about that. And Brendan, who's my ex, but also my dear friend, we're going to go to the new IKEA in San Francisco.
I didn't even realize there was an IKEA now in San Francisco.
Yeah, it's great. They went in onto Mid Market Street. It's going to be really good for the economy.
Oh my
So,
God, where what's like the cross street?
I think it's like probably between like fifth and sixth. I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is it going into where the Westfield Mall was?
further down
Okay.
or
Okay,
up,
we've
I guess.
completely bored people who don't live in San Francisco now,
Yeah,
so let's just skip over that part and
yeah.
move right on. So before we go much further,
Yeah.
let's get this out of the way immediately. By moving downstairs in the house, I have a special guest, and we might as well just deal with it because she's going to disrupt everything in short order. So Tizzy is here with me. There's the Tiz.
Oh, beautiful girl.
Yes, Tizzy. This is a. I'm going to give a special scoop to people who watch Ask Eddie and Ann to let them know that Tizzy will be a TV star very soon because I recorded some episodes of Noir Alley recently, and Tizzy is actually in. I don't know if she's not actually in the episodes themselves or whatever we call them, but we did. Oh, see, look, as soon as Tizzy came, then there you go. Is
She
that
has to
Charlotte or
be.
Emily?
Uh, that is Charlotte. Emily's asleep in the red pillow, which you can't quite see from here. So now
Okay,
Charlotte's
very good.
investigating her sister.
Okay, and but Tizzy is going to be on a promo that will air on TCM. Um, it was pretty exciting. She actually came to the set, and she was good. She was very professional. You were very good, Tizzy. And of course, this is all to note the publication of Kitty Farrell in the case of the Marshmallow Monkey, which came out on September 19th. For those who don't know, that's my kid's book, which features a feline detective.
And who is that feline detective based on, Eddie?
Well, if it was a movie from the 40s, it would have been Ella Raines, would have been playing Kitty Farrell. But sorry, are you jealous? Does that make you jealous? You thought it was you? I think Tizzy thinks that because she does look a little bit like Kitty Farrell in the stories. But anyway, this is we'll see how long she will sit here like this. But it's weird because most cats don't do this.
Yeah.
Where they sit on their back like this and let you scratch their belly. But Tizzy is not a normal cat.
Well,
It's
she's
just
also a traveling cat. If people don't know that, she actually enjoys travel.
she is a traveling cat. She's gone with me to she actually next week. When is this going to air, Ann?
It's going to air on the 5th.
Oh, and we get a vocal. Um, the 5th. It's the night that I am actually doing an event at the Mob Museum in Las Vegas. They have a Welcome to America. There's a museum dedicated to the history of organized crime, very
Okay.
fittingly in Las Vegas. And I am doing an event there on the 5th. So, too late for anybody watching this to get there. But Tizzy will be traveling with me to Las Vegas. It will actually be her third trip to Las Vegas.
Oh my goodness.
And she is not good at the tables. She does not win. She's very, very poor at placing bets. And anyway, I'm joking. She's been to LA a bunch. She's been around. She is a traveling cat.
There you go.
Okay,
Oh,
Tiz, you want to get down. I'm gonna that was it. I forced you to do all of that. Now you can go do your thing. See ya. Entertain the people in the background now. And here she goes. She'll be walking into your frame shortly. So let's. Oh, the last thing, we'll get this out of the way really quick too. Since we last spoke, I did the festival in Detroit, which was great fun. Uh, I think everybody had a wonderful time. The people were just tremendous. And it was a really good, for an abbreviated program from the 1948 thing, it was really packed with great films. And for a change, I actually got to watch a few of them again, which was nice.
yeah.
And we threw in Odds Against Tomorrow as a tribute to Harry Belafonte, the late Harry Belafonte. So that went over like gangbusters. There were a lot of people who had not seen that before. So it was
And
good.
yeah. And so then next week, from when this airs, Noir City, DC starts.
Correct. I will be in Washington, D.C. from the 13th to the 15th of October. Something else is going on the 15th of October. I can't remember what it is right now, but I will be there. Cheers, Ann.
Cheers.
And all of that is great. Very much looking forward to DC. We always have a blast there.
And Foster Hirsch will be there the following weekend.
Correct. I will be there on the opening weekend. Foster will be coming in and doing his typically fabulous job on the last 3 days of the festival. Okay, so let's do some questions.
Okay, so this is from Sara, and she has questions about Lightning Strikes Twice and Woman on the Run, and she does connect them.
I'm assuming that Sara saw Lightning Strikes Twice when I showed it on Noir Alley. Most people don't come up with a Lightning Strikes Twice question just out of the blue. So
did you show it in March? Because we're on March questions. We've gotten out of February, and we're now in March.
I did.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. And the question is?
The dialogue of Lightning Strikes Twice was nuanced, subtle, and wicked. I wonder what male author has also sustained that continuous level of repartee among so many different characters. So we can start with that before we go on. Or do you want me to read more?
So she's wondering if there's a male author that has achieved the level of repartee that Lenore Coffey, the screenwriter of Lightning Strikes Twice. I'm trying to remember the name of the novelist because I can't tell you. I haven't read the novel, so I can't tell you if Margaret Eckard was the novelist, and I cannot tell you if that dialogue is in the novel or if Lenore Coffey, who is a very fine screenwriter, if she came up with all that stuff. But Sara, that's a if a man asked that question. Has any woman ever written a script with that much clever repartee? I think that would be considered somewhat sexist. Yes, there are all kinds of men who have written scripts with that level of banter.
Who wrote Laura?
Well, Vera Caspary wrote the novel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
I meant the screenplay.
And Jay Draitler was one of the writers of the screenplay. I can't remember who the other... off the top of my head at the moment, I can't remember, but there's fabulous repartee in there. But Vera Caspary was a very good dialogue writer.
Yeah,
but I mean, right off the, I mean, I don't know, Jonathan Latimer, Ben Hecht, Raymond Chandler. I mean, there's.
Well, I think Hammett. I mean, the stuff in the Maltese Falcon with all the different characters and the way they interact with each other.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. That's but I thought of Chandler instantly because the repartee in the novel Double Indemnity is not as good as the repartee. But then again, how about Billy Wilder, right? I mean,
there we go.
So anyway,
and Preston Sturges.
Yes. So anyway, yes, there have been quite a few men who have written such quick-witted repartee.
Also, why was Trev out riding the range without a hat, and why were his clothes so neat and clean no matter where he was?
Trev was the character in that movie played by Richard Todd. I mean, that's kind of a goofy question, but uh, I'm going to say it's because Richard Todd probably looked really awkward in a cowboy hat. I mean, Zachary Scott almost pulled it off.
Yeah.
But I don't think Richard Todd, being an Irishman, that wearing cowboy hats is second nature to him. And he had a good head of hair that they probably didn't want to mess up. And also, it's a King Vidor movie, and King Vidor people always look fresh.
Yeah.
I mean, that if you watch Duel in the Sun, it is the cleanest, tidiest, most pristine Western ever made. So I think that's part of the reason. Yeah.
Okay. And the scene between Shelley and Trev in Moon Canyon reminded me of Glacier Point in Yosemite. Where was it shot?
It was not shot in Yosemite. I can guarantee you that. I think that movie was shot in like Paso Robles or no, I think it was in Victorville. I think parts of it were shot in Victorville, which means it was probably there's like a Mojave State something or other park right outside Victorville, and I think that's where it was filmed. So it's in San Bernardino County. It's in Southern California, not in Yosemite. They would not have sent a film crew that far for that few, for a scene.
Okay, and Woman on the Run also showed Anne Sheridan gradually changing her perception of her missing husband, similar to Shelley's evolving grasp of Trev's situation. At the amusement park towards the finale, the life-size laughing Sally made me think it was San Francisco. Am I mistaken? And that's a yes and no answer.
Okay, so wait a second. It's not Laughing Sally. It's Laughing Sal.
Yes.
Okay, so that manic that's a dude. Believe it or not. Well, at least it has a guy's name, Laughing Sal. I'm sorry, I just totally spaced out on what the question was.
So,
made her think it was San Francisco.
San Francisco, which is the film is in San Francisco, but where was Sal?
Okay, this is interesting, but Sarah's question is odd. That's what kind of threw me because the entire movie is set in San Francisco. So why was it Laughing Sal that made Sarah think that it was set in San Francisco when they don't miss a single landmark in San Francisco in that movie? You've got the Bay Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, Coit Tower, North Beach. I mean, everything is in that movie. Okay, but the amusement park finale is the only thing not shot in San Francisco. It was shot at Pacific Ocean Park in Los Angeles, and so the whole amusement park thing did not work in San Francisco because the Great Highway intersects the beach and playland. So logistically, they could not actually shoot the ending in San Francisco because it was essential to the plot that the beach be right next to the amusement park, which is how it is at POP, Pacific Ocean Park in LA. So that's where that was shot. And I do believe that Laughing Sal, I hate to break the news to anyone who might not be aware of this, but it's a machine. It's a mechanical thing. And so there are multiples. So Laughing Sal was actually in many amusement parks. He is famous for being like the symbol of Playland at the beach in San Francisco, but that's not the only place they had a Laughing Sal. So I don't know which one they shot. It's a very weird thing at the end of the movie when the camera just kind of swings away, and then you suddenly see Laughing Sal laughing. It's the last shot of the movie, and I'm going to assume they shot it at Pacific Ocean Park and not in San Francisco.
Right.
Okay.
The, let's see. The title was confusing though, because Anne Sheridan's husband was on the run, and she was the pursuer. Am I alone in feeling? Am I alone? Am I alone in feeling this about the title?
Sara got a lot out of it. Sara got her money's worth out of this because
Yeah,
she
she
got like
did.
6 questions in here. Okay. Yes, the original story that the movie is based on is called Man on the Run. I think, God, I can't remember the woman's name who wrote it. I'm very sorry. Sylvia something. And yes, it was called Man on the Run, but clearly because Ann Sheridan is the star of the movie, and nobody knew who Ross Elliott was at the time, who plays her husband. You have very, very horror movie lighting right now, Anne. It's kind of creeping me out. I'm getting kind of a ring. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That lighting was a little odd.
Yeah. I actually
But
had to turn up my volume so I could hear you. So
oh,
that was
okay,
the setting
okay,
screen. That's why I went weird like that. Nothing happened. I'm fine. The cats are fine.
okay. I don't want like the ring to suddenly happen here on this Zoom call. That would, yeah. So, all right, whatever you do, don't put your hair in front of your face. That would like go totally freak me out. Don't do it. Yes, it was she's right. It was originally called Man on the Run, and they changed it to Woman on the Run because Ann Sheridan was on all the posters. It's as simple as that.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. Thank you, Sara.
Thank you, Sara. That was fun. Thank you for watching Noir Alley, as what you obviously did. Okay, here's a name I haven't heard before. Morse. Morse weighs in and asks, is there any news of a restoration, a screening, a Noir Alley showing, or a home video release? I can't believe I said home video release. Like, there's no video anymore. For Canyon City. I've heard so much about this one. Um, okay, Morse, at the present time, the Film Noir Foundation is not pursuing a restoration of this film, although it's not entirely out of the question because we did locate original elements for the film, so it is a possibility that it could be restored. I'm kind of waiting around because um, I know that the rights to the film belong to someone, and I'm not eager right now to get into a multi-part deal to finagle all of that. So I'm kind of hoping that one of these home uh, entertainment companies, a Kino or Arrow or the one who should do it, and I am embarrassed that I can't remember the company right now, is the company that did, and they did beautiful jobs with this stuff. That did Raw Deal and T-Men and He Walked by Night and all those Anthony Mann films, which are all Eagle Lion movies, because Canyon City is also an Eagle Lion movie. That's something that would be kind of cool for that company to explore. So I'm hoping they do it. If nobody does it, then I might be nudged into pursuing a restoration of that film, which
Right.
is, it's not a great film in my estimation, but it's a really, really interesting movie, and it's John Alton photographed it, so it's pretty stunning visually.
Yeah, and you showed it at North City.
I showed it at a Noir City festival in Los Angeles years ago, and I have no idea what became of that print. So, I mean, this is a thing that happens. It's like either it gets subsumed into the bowels of a major corporation, or it's not really cared for properly and it ends up disappearing into some private collector's, vault. But that print that 35 print that we showed is not in circulation any longer.
Okay, and this is Nathanael from New Braunfels, Texas. Eddie has expressed his affinity for comic books in the past. Have either of you read the Darwyn Cooke adaptations of Richard Stark's Parker books? Are either of you fans of the original Stark novels? The first one came out in 1962, which places it right at the end of the original Noir cycle. But you can clearly see how influential movies like The Asphalt Jungle and Rififi were on those books.
Are you a comic book fan, Anne?
No, I don't read them. Every once in a while, like before the Watchmen movie came out, I read the comic books, which is kind of funny because my ex-husband was like really into those, and I never actually read those when I was with
Yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I did
I
read all
think
the
I think
Tick
you either.
ones.
I wonder if there's anybody who comes to comic books late. I just
Yeah,
wonder because if you read comic books when you're a kid, I think you're always going to kind of be partial to comic books. You're going to have a fondness for them. If
yeah.
you didn't read them as a kid, I don't think you're going to suddenly develop the habit later in life.
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't, but every once in a while I'll read something like the Tick because I love the Tick, and so I've like read all the Tick comics
Yeah, the
because I
tick
just
was
think they're
pretty funny.
hilarious.
Yeah. Um, okay. Yes, I have all of those Darwyn Cooke Parker books. The I have the Martini collection, which is a slipcase, the big slipcase thing. It's super high end, and I absolutely love it. I really admire Darwyn Cooke, the late Darwyn Cooke, um, as a comic book writer and artist. I think he did an absolutely beautiful job with those stories. I think on a Noir Alley, I'm not sure. I don't think I mentioned this on the show because it was a little too esoteric. But that week, I showed a movie from the late '50s called Hellbound, where oh God, what's the guy's name? Jesus, I shouldn't have gone down this road if I didn't know the answer. John Russell, I think, is the actor who stars in Hellbound. Super handsome guy with a chiseled jaw, black hair. He made a lot of movies in the '50s, a lot of westerns. Anyway, I did a thing on social media where I put a photograph of him in the movie Hellbound next to Darwyn Cooke's rendering of Parker in one of those things because they're identical. It's almost like Darwyn Cooke based his visualization of this character on the actor. And I do I have the guy? Is it John Russell? Why am I drawing? Why am I being so stupid tonight? I can't remember. But anyway, everybody who's watching this will look it up. If you look up, Hellbound or Undertow or any of that stuff, this guy was in those movies. He's, square jawed, black haired leading man. But I loved the Darwyn Cooke stuff. He was great. Died way too young. Very very sad. Very sad. Okay.
So
Um,
I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. What's the poster on top of your bar that hangs above your bar? I keep looking at it, like in the light there, in the lighted space.
that is, for some inexplicable reason, I have a poster in that space for the movie Forbidden
Okay.
with the black haired guy is Tony Curtis and the woman is Joanne Drew,
Okay.
and it's not a favorite movie or anything. It's just it's a nice poster, and it's like I kind of rotate the posters in that space. So I mean, Woman in the Run has been in there, and Night in the City has been in there, but right now Forbidden is in there.
Yeah, it's
So
beautiful. So I was getting distracted because
oh, okay. So
I was
I'm gonna
looking
I'm
at you
gonna
and I kept
I'm
seeing
gonna
the
put my head right here
photo
so you
there.
you you can't see it. Yeah, but that's what it is. Forbidden, which is kind of it's not really even a film noir. But years ago, it was funny. My pal Jeff Mantor at Larry Edmonds bookstore set aside a whole bunch of half sheets that came into the shop because he thought I would enjoy them, and I bought them all. It was like 20 half sheets, and that was one of them. So working my way through them, rotating them, you know, that's it. Thank you for asking. Okay, uh, John asks, and it's funny. This time we have people didn't say where they were from. I wish I knew where people were from. Sara, where are you from? Morse, where the heck are you? Nathanael, we know, is from New Braunfels, Texas, but I don't know where John is. And what's a more generic name than John? So this is, who knows what this is. But this is a great question. John says, would film noir have existed if World War II had not? Didn't the cataclysmic socio-political ramifications of the Second World War create the atmosphere of the film noir movement? That is a really good question, John. My answer to that is yes and no. Don't you hate that when somebody does a yes and no? But here's the thing. Certainly, if the Nazis had not assumed power in Germany, all of those fabulous directors would not have had a reason to flee the country and end up in Hollywood. So Fritz Lang and Robert Siodmak and Otto Preminger and Fred Zinnemann and Edgar Ulmer and Billy Wilder and all these people may never have ended up in Hollywood. They may have anyway, and they may have come on more pleasant terms, not like escaping, but just like, I'm going to go where the work is, but I don't think the stories that make up film noir are here in the first place, and they were kind of informed by the Depression era, or even earlier than that. Because let's face it, Hammett was writing hard-boiled fiction before the stock market crash, and I just think that so much, James M. Cain and Hammett and Chandler, all this stuff predated World War II. And that's the literary underpinnings of film noir. Would it have looked the same if all of these people had not immigrated to the United States to get away from the Nazis? That's very hard to say, right? Orson Welles, American. Edward Dmytryk, Canadian. They were already here. They weren't running away from anything. And Wells certainly had a massive influence on the visual look that we associate with film noir.
Yeah, and I also think Val Lewton was an influence on film noir as well.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, Russian, that was Val Lewton's back. I mean, he was an immigrant from Russia. But clearly not driven out.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a yes and a no answer. Is I think noir would have happened anyway, but I don't think it would have been the same. I don't think it would have been. It's interesting to speculate. It might have existed, but not without Preminger, not with Fritz Lang may not have been part of it in this country. They may have made noir in Europe, so it was going to happen one way or the other. I mean, but I just think that, as I've said several times in the past, it was like a perfect storm, and that's it was those things that I give the American writers the bulk of the credit for creating the language and the stories that we associate with noir, and I give European directors the bulk of the credit for the visual look of film noir. So that's a very interesting speculative question,
And I just wanted to say, since I mentioned Val Lewton, that it is October. So for people looking for horror stuff that they may want to watch, I really, really suggest Val Lewton's films. He was producer, in case people don't know, who his films are incredible. I mean, they're very literate. I mean, I Walked with the Zombie is my favorite film of his, which is basically Jane Eyre with zombies.
Yeah,
Before that
exactly.
was,
That's so funny. It's so funny you say that, Anne, because it's both Jane Eyre and I Walked with a Zombie are showing on TCM this month. And
oh,
I just watched a thing that Guillermo del Toro recorded with his 5 films to not miss on TCM this month. And Jane Eyre was one, and I Walked with a Zombie was another one. So I mean, you can really see, and I think he had a Mario Bava in
all
there.
right.
Black Sabbath, I
Yeah.
think, was in there, and I honestly forget what the other two were, but oh, Freaks, Freaks
Yeah.
was one of them, and don't ask me what the other was,
Yeah.
uh,
And just so
but
people, oh, go ahead.
you're so right on with Val Lewton being a underappreciated uh, contributor to the whole noir movement.
Yeah. And I was going to tell people too, in case I don't know. So at filmnoirfoundation.org, there is a TV listings page. And so I list out the noir and noir stained and neo-noir films playing. So if you guys are looking kind of for stuff on TCM that might appeal to you as a noir fan that's horror, I got a whole listing up there. And they're showing a lot of Val Lewton this year. So
Fabulous,
yeah,
fabulous.
just wanted to plug that because I want people to watch Val Lewton films. They're really great.
What's your favorite? Oh, you just said I
So
Walked
I
with a
Walked the
Zombie
Zombie,
is your
which I
favorite.
got to see it. Oh, I didn't tell you that. They played one of his films there at the PFA that was like it's a juvenile delinquent one.
That's one of the later ones,
It's
right?
one of the later ones, yeah. So he did that, and but it was interesting because it was playing during North City. So I literally skipped North City one night and went up to the PFA because I figured this was gonna be like my only chance
Yeah,
to see this film because it's like not on the Val Lewton set
right.
that's come out.
That Val Lewton set is pretty fantastic.
It is.
Giving a shout out to my buddy Constantine Nasser, who put that set together and did all the special features and everything. That was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's really, really well done. Okay, so this is from Carlton from Atlanta, Georgia. Are there really are there any classical film noir movies that might be worth a redo along the lines of Nightmare Alley, with the chance of going back to the original source material without the production code limitations?
Um, Another interesting question. Well, given how it seemed like people were pretty split on the Noir Alley remake, considering that I just mentioned Guillermo del Toro, um, some people really liked it and other people detested it. I think it was detested more on principle than on the quality of the film because I didn't. If there hadn't been an original one, I don't know that people would have not enjoyed the new one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like Bradley Cooper is no Tyrone Power. Um,
Well, who is?
Granted, but that's like say if I wrote a novel and somebody said you're not Raymond Chandler, that's kind of unfair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I'm not Raymond Chandler. I'm not Dashiell Hammett either, or James M. Cain. But I put out a good effort, I think. So I don't understand why people think that way. Okay, so this is a really interesting question. I will start by saying that I'm aware of several classic noirs that they've tried to remake. Um, I know that James Elroy wrote a new version of Laura for 20th Century Fox that never happened. Um, let's face it. I mean, James M. Cain, Double Indemnity and Postman Always Rings Twice have been remade 100 times without credit, right?
Yeah.
I mean the direct to whatever the direct to video in the 80s and 90s was all James M. Cain.
Yeah.
It's like Joan Severance played Cora in The Postman Always Rings like 10 times without ever any credit to James M. Cain. Um, a movie that I would like to see remade. Um, I Wake Up Screaming, right? The Steve Fisher novel. When they made it, they they moved it from Hollywood to New York because
Yeah.
Hollywood did not want to make itself look bad.
Yeah.
So that book has never actually been shot. So I Wake Up Screaming would be really interesting because Hollywood loves to make thriller movies about itself, like The
Yeah.
Player and stuff like that. And I Wake Up Screaming fits perfectly into that. So that one seems like a no brainer. And I know that a number of people have told me uh, that they would like to do In a Lonely Place as it was actually written.
Hmm.
I don't think it's a good idea because there are too many serial killer movies,
Yeah.
right? And I just don't I don't think it would have anything special about it. I think people love the Bogart film so much that it's like, oh, and then they're surprised to find out that the book is very different. So they think, oh, I love that movie. Let's do the novel and not the movie. But it's kind of been done. It's a
Yeah.
serial killer story, and it doesn't have that much interest. The one I would like to see remade from Dorothy Hughes is Ride the Pink Horse
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
it was never actually done the way that as the novel.
Yeah.
And the fact that the criminal in the novel is a United States senator to me makes it like perfect for these times.
Yeah.
uh, so I would love to see that. I think Ride the Pink Horse would be a tremendous classic noir to remake today.
Yeah.
Whether it was as a period film or it probably could be adapted in a contemporary setting. I think it could still be done. There you go, Carlton. That's my answer to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Eric asks, this is pretty funny. In Where the Sidewalk Ends, Scalise, that's the Gary Merrill villain character, keeps yeah. Well, he says administrating what appears to be nasal spray, but from my memory of La Chiffre in James Bond, isn't it likelier? And I lean forward for you, Anne, because in the Daniel Craig James Bond version, La Chiffre was played by your man Mads Mikkelsen. Uh, isn't it likelier that it is Benzedrine he's inhaling? The IMDb trivia page notes that he uses a nasal inhaler, though showing no obvious signs of congestion. And then I love this. Eric adds, developed in 1928, Benzedrine brand amphetamine was available without, I guess he means without a prescription at the time, which is how Scalise's use of an amphetamine inhaler ducked the production code narcotics taboo of the day. Well, yes, that is absolutely the case. So that's pretty. Now I got to backtrack and figure out what was the question.
So,
Isn't it likelier that it was Benzedrine? Yes, that was always my assumption. Whenever I see an inhaler in a movie, I don't actually think the person has nasal congestion or asthma. Any kind of inhaler, they're actually using drugs. I think that's the safe way of suggesting that that's what is happening. Richard Widmark uses an inhaler in The Street with No Name. which was his follow-up to Kiss of Death. And then interestingly, in the remake of Kiss of Death, Barbet Schroeder's remake of Kiss of Death, where Nicolas Cage plays the Richard Widmark part, he has an inhaler. So it's not in the first Kiss of Death, but in the remake, there's an inhaler. I'm trying to think of other ones. Can you think of any other
Violent Wednesday?
violent?
No, Violent Sunday.
No,
Violent Saturday.
Violent Saturday. You got to it eventually. Violent Saturday. Yes. Who is it? Is it Marvin?
Lee Marvin.
Lee Marvin has an inhaler. Correct.
But I honestly thought he had a cold. Like I had no idea this was a drug thing. I feel very
good.
naive.
Very good, Anne. I mean, you may have taken 3 shots at the title, but you got it. I mean that's right. I mean he does have an inhaler in that film. That's right.
Yeah,
fantastic.
I was so surprised when you screened that, because I said words I'd never thought I'd say, which is Richard Egan was amazing in that. But he's like so good in it. It's such a great performance. To me, I mean, it's not he's a terrible actor, but he's not great. And he was fantastic in that.
Well, Richard Egan is one of those square-jawed guys that you always feel like he's a leading man because he looks like a leading man, not because he deserves to be a leading man, But he has given some good performances along the way. And yeah, he is good in Violent Wednesday, Sunday, Saturday. Whatever. Sorry. Ross Martin in Experiment in Terror. Perhaps the most terrifying asthmatic in movie history. I just want to throw that out there, and which is coming up very shortly on Noir Alley.
And I highly recommend it. People have not seen that. It is a very good movie.
You can probably hear Tizzy crying in the background there. I don't know what the hell You've already eaten. Give me a break. Okay. I know in the new issue of the Noir City magazine, Andy Wolverton writes a wonderful piece about 10 Rillington Place.
Yeah.
The Richard Fleischer movie starring Richard Attenborough. And not to be a spoiler or anything, but I'll just say that an inhaler figures prominently in the plot.
Yeah.
I haven't spoiled anything. An inhaler figures prominently in the plot of that movie.
I've never been able to get myself to watch that movie.
It's a pretty scary movie. It's
a very upsetting story, and it's a true crime story because this is a true crime issue that we have out right now, and that was just one of those stories where I don't think I can watch a movie of it because it was such a upsetting story.
It is very, very. Anyway, I hope people. I'll take that advantage of that moment to just say, I thought this true crime issue of Noir City was one of the best issues we've ever done. And I hope people get it. I hope they love it. I'd like to hear more responses from people about what they enjoy in the issues, because I was so pleased with the way this issue, Imogen Sara Smith just did such a fabulous job of putting this issue together. And it's upsetting because I realize that a lot of people, they love the classic noir because it's an escape, but the true crime issue kind of brought it all home, like learning that the Harry Powell character in Night of the Hunter was based on a real guy, which I didn't know before we put this issue together. And the true crimes are infinitely worse than what's depicted on screen. But anyway, 10 Rillington Place. Andy wrote a great article about that, and an inhaler figures in it. And of course, maybe it's not really an inhaler, but obviously Dennis Hopper and Blue Velvet probably takes the cake for inhaling substances and losing his mind.
And actually, Agatha Christie uses an inhaler in The Mirror Cracked. And it's one of the characters is asthmatic, and she decides she's going to try and blackmail someone that already murdered someone, and they put cyanide in her inhaler. It's really intense.
Well, I'm not going to go any further with that one.
Okay.
If we had planned it, I have inhalers. I use inhalers myself. So, I mean, I've had asthma. I had asthma when I was a kid, and then completely got over it at like 17, and then it all came back at 30, and I still have I have one on an as needed basis at this point. Okay. It's you. You're number 7.
It's me. Number 7. This is from John from Brooklyn. One of my favorite movies of recent vintage is Emily the Criminal. When I first heard the title, I thought it sounds like a comedy, but it's not. I think it fits into the noir genre, as Emily knows what she's doing is wrong, but does it anyway. She's a complicated character. What do both of you think about this film?
So, Emily the Criminal has come up previously on these shows. Have you seen it finally?
I still haven't seen it.
Oh,
I know.
And do I have to give you homework? I think it's fabulous. I would cite Emily the Criminal as like the kind of the preeminent example of what I see happening in the genre, with female protagonists sort of coming to the fore in these stories now. Although the writer and director of that film is a guy, John Patton Ford, and I thought it was fantastic, and I didn't quite get the Aubrey Plaza mania. You know, she's the actress who plays Emily in the movie. I watched White Lotus. Did you watch White Lotus? Did you ever see that?
No.
And maybe a couple of other things that she was in, and I didn't quite, you know, she to me in White Lotus, she was kind of a one note character, and it didn't really register with me. But man, then I watched Emily the Criminal, and she is fantastic in that film. And the writing and directing is great. And it is absolutely, I would say that it is spot on. If people say, aren't we living in a time, given the factors that created film noir back in the post World War II era, aren't we seeing a lot of the same things happening today? Will there be another noir renaissance or something? If that's the case, then Emily the Criminal is like right there in the top 2 or 3 of films that are emblematic of noir in contemporary culture.
Okay.
I just think it's a great film.
Well, I'll see if Ted wants to watch it. We can do a Saturday night screening, but we got to finish The Bear. We're finishing The Bear this weekend. So,
right on. Which I haven't even started, but that's okay.
It's
all right,
good.
Here we go. All right, this is John. Or no, it's not John. It's Joe. It's Joe on Long Island.
That's not my brother-in-law, is it?
I don't have my glasses on. I can't tell what the hell I'm reading here. So forgive me if I screw this all up. I recently watched David Lynch's brilliant Lost Highway for the first time in several years. What does that mean, Joe?
Well, yeah, it's the first time he's watched it in several years.
First time in several
saw
years.
it a while ago, and then he hasn't watched it in a while, and so he went back.
Joe, forgive me for saying this, but sometimes I think that movie fans are like, they don't want to admit they haven't seen it before. So they say, I watched it for the first time in several years. It's like, it's okay if you hadn't seen it before.
He's seen it before.
Okay, I'm just saying, I hear this all
I
the time.
edited his letter slightly,
Okay.
which I now regret.
All right, he saw it for the first time in several years. I'm just teasing you, Joe. And for the first time, the very noir elements stuck out for me. Is there any other neo-noir which with such strong sci-fi elements? And I'm not including Blade Runner, as that was just placed in the future and did not feature the psychogenic fugue that changed Fred into Pete. Okay, so here's my answer to that. You've seen Lost Highway, right?
I have seen Lost Highway.
Okay. That is a Barry. That trip is not necessarily a David Lynch thing. It's a Barry Gifford thing.
Okay.
Barry Gifford, who wrote the story that Lost Highway is based on. I showed Lost Highway at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood with Barry as a guest, and it was interesting how many people uh, contacted me afterwards to complain about it, thinking that that whole psychogenic fugue thing was nonsense. And I don't, I have no opinion about it one way or the other. I mean, the movie is what it is, but I'm trying to like, I don't really think of Lost Highway as having sci-fi elements. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to categorize, which is what I love about Barry Gifford's work. It's almost impossible to categorize. It's very noir influenced, but it's an unspellable word that I would use to describe it as phantasmagoric. It's
That
like,
was actually the word I was thinking, believe it or not.
there you go. See,
Yeah.
great minds think alike. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what this means, but think about it,
Yeah.
expand your mind. But it's interesting. So I think what Joe on Long Island is asking is are there other movies like this that deal with weird head spaces that aren't necessarily, see, because sci-fi to me would be like a sci-fi noir would be something like Minority Report, right? The Spielberg thing with Tom Cruise and Colin Farrell. That's Dark Passage as a science fiction movie. It's set in the future, and it's like the culture has changed, but it's the same story. I think what Joe is asking about is like movies that get into like the total headspace. They don't have to be futuristic movies. They're just dealing with the psychology of these in a totally different way. So, but sometimes those are also, they have to be set kind of in the future so that you can imagine that there's some gizmo or something that sets the plot in motion. There
Yeah,
was
I
a
mean, because it's also kind of, for some reason, it's making me think of the film with Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie that's set in Venice.
Don't Look Now. Holy God, one of my all-time favorite movies.
Great movie.
I'm going to say that Don't Look Now is top 10. I toyed, I got to vote in the Sight and Sound 100 greatest movies. I I toyed with putting Don't Look Now on that list because I love it so much. I tend to cop out and take a traditionalist's point of view, and it has to be like the canon.
Yeah.
But if you ask me what are my 10 favorite movies, I would put Don't Look Now on that list.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I probably think I told you the story before, but when I was in Venice, I was by myself. It was a family trip, but I was by myself, and I kind of got turned around and wound up like in, I don't know if people have been to Venice, but it's like a lot of like kind of like alleyways and everything's really close together, and it's very dark even in the day and stuff. And I wound up like in a dead end, and all of a sudden like the ending of Don't Look Now like flashed in my head. It was like, ah. had to take a deep breath and get myself turned back around. And that was during the day, because in Venice, like when you're in those like alleyways, it's basically dark, even though you would think it was night even when you're in there in the day, because all
Yep.
of the buildings are really close together. But anyway,
I would say that the ending of Don't Look Now is probably one of the greatest endings in the history of movies.
yeah,
Just for the way it messes with your head and how it totally pays off the story in a way that it's almost like Nicholas Rogue is taking his movie and plugging it into your brain in a way that it's like you thought it was this, but it's this, Damn, that movie is great.
yeah. So if people, and that's another one. So if you're looking for something for a Halloween month, I think that would fall into it. And it is. It's just such a great film. That's all I have to say. It really is.
Yeah, and based on a short story by Daphne du Maurier,
It is.
and it's really fascinating. I love that movie.
Yeah.
And the cinematography, because Rogue, of course, was a cinematographer.
Yeah.
It's just all tremendous. Anyway,
Yeah.
there was a movie recently to turn that coin over.
Sorry.
There was a movie recently that I think kind of fits the bill of what Joe is talking about. It was a cable thing called Reminiscence, written and directed by, I can't remember the woman's name, but I'm sorry if through some fluke she's listening to this. I didn't like it at all. It just didn't work for me, but it did have this kind of the same thing as Lost Highway. It had kind of this head trip thing. There was another movie a few years ago that came out that totally tanked with Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway called Serenity. Did you happen to see this?
It's been on my list forever. It's on my just watch list.
Okay, all right. Um, I mean, I encourage people to watch it because it divided people so vehemently because there is a massive twist in this movie that is so audacious that I couldn't help but think, man, that took some stones to do that. Because otherwise it is playing just like a film noir.
Yeah.
It is a sun-baked film noir with Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway is like the mystery woman, and there's, are you kill my husband for me, please, and all this stuff. And it goes on like this for 2/3 of the movie, and then suddenly there is a gigantic elevator drop of a twist in this movie that would qualify for what Joe is calling sci-fi. And it was so berserk that I actually kind of dug it.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I admire like I say, I admire the balls. I think the guy's name is Stephen Knight, was the writer and director. I admire the balls to do this so much that I can't say that was really stupid, which a lot of people did.
Yeah.
But it was just like, no, that's crazy, and you have to take your hat off to this guy for even trying. So there. I hope I got a few more people to watch.
Yeah, and you got me. Is bumping up my list of things.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and I'm going to read the rest of this because Joe gives a shout out to Anne for mentioning yours truly, Johnny Dollar, and Richard Diamond, Private Detective. But let me add the inimitable Sidney Greenstreet's The New Adventures of Nero Wolfe.
Okay. It's a fun show, but I don't like the portrayal of Wolfe in the show. Wolfe's hard. I mean, Nero Wolfe is like, because I guess because in some ways he's not a likable person, so they always make him more likable in the when they adapt it, like when William Conrad did it, and then the show. And so I really liked the Italian version of Werewolf's really good. There's an Italian series of Werewolf on MHC, and it's really cleverly done because in one of the Wolf novels, Wolf takes on the FBI. So they set the series after that one that he's had to flee the country, and that's why he's in Rome. And it's him and Archie in Rome. It's very good.
Wow, I had no idea. Okay, I have MHC, so I'm gonna watch that.
It's good, but they also kind of soften Wolf up in that one. But the one when Maury Chaykin played him in the Canadian produced series, it was on A&E with Timothy Hutton. That was Timothy Hutton's baby. He really wanted to do that.
Oh, interesting. He plays Archie, right?
He plays Archie, and he's pretty good Archie. But Maury Chaykin is perfect as Wolf because he plays him just like he is in the book.
I can see that.
It's good.
Which is too bad because honestly, Sidney Greenstreet should have been like the perfect.
Yeah, and I think he could have played him, but I think the radio series was sort of softening up his character, and like I said, that just happens in a lot of the adaptations because it's he's not he's not a good person in some ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're getting to the end here. Let's bring it in for a landing. Here we go.
Okay. So this is Lauren from Chicago. My first question is for Eddie. Do you consider Alfred Hitchcock's Spellbound and The Parodying Case, both starring your favorite actor Gregory Peck, to be good representatives of noir films?
Lauren must know too much about me because he's being sarcastic when he says my favorite actor is Gregory Peck. Because for whatever reason, I'm not a huge Gregory Peck fan, and I know Diane Baker reamed me out one time because I said some disparaging things about Gregory Peck, and she totally adores him. So I should calm it down. I don't like either Spellbound or The Parodying Case. Parodying Case. I just the Parodying Case was a mistake. I don't think Hitchcock ever should have made that film. There, I said it.
Yeah.
And Spellbound is a film with a lot of gimmicky stuff in it, the Salvador Dali dream sequences and the huge gun, that at the end of the film and all that stuff. It's interesting as an example of the movie's obsession with Freudian psychology at that point in history, but it's just not a really engaging film to me. So I'm not keen on that movie at all. Hitchcock has done, psychological thrillers that aren't psychological thrillers all in caps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't like either of those movies.
Yeah.
And then there's a special question for you here.
Okay. Anne, since you're a big fan of golden era of radio, were you a fan of the Alan Ladd radio series Box 13, and do you think it qualifies as noir? I like Box 13, and I think it's very noirish because people don't know it's this writer who has a PO box that because he's looking for adventures, and so people write him to get his help in these weird situations. Like one of them, this woman's being blackmailed, and they go to the apartment, and the guy that was blackmailing her has been murdered, and he's like, "Oh, go call the police." And she says, "Yeah, the phone. There's no phone in here, so I'll go downstairs." And then he sees a telephone directory, and he realizes there is a phone in the apartment, and she's just which is a very femme fatale thing to do. So even though he's a writer, not a detective, he's sort of functioning like a detective in a film noir.
I had never even heard of Box 13 before this.
Yeah. It's interesting. yeah, it's just great because when I stumbled across it the first time, I just didn't know that Alan Ladd had done a lot of radio work. Like everybody guest spotted on different shows, but I hadn't realized he had actually had it wasn't, but I don't think it was very long lived. I mean, it's a pretty short run.
Yeah. Interesting. And you need to write another piece on radio noir for
Yeah.
the Noir City magazine. Like picking up all this stuff that you've heard since you wrote the first piece you did for the magazine. So
Yeah.
there, just throwing that out there.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, and our last question. It's from Jay and Connie in Ann Arbor, Michigan, who were at Noir City, Detroit. Fabulous folks. So Jay and Connie ask regarding The Distance, which is my first novel. We couldn't find any definition for the Swansea Hollow punch. Could you elaborate? Did you make up the fighters' names in the book, or are they real names pulled from the past? Sounds like you were given an incredible insight into a world of bygone sport by your father. Um, and then they note that they love the picture of that teenager on the author's bio page of The Distance. Yeah, right. Um, it was my. They asked, was it your first book length effort? If not, what was? Well, it was certainly my first book length fiction effort. Anyway, this is a thank you for mentioning the novel. This is a very obscure reference. The Swansea Hollow Punch was based on the reference in the book is based entirely on a story that my dad used to tell. Many of the things in this novel, when the character of Billy Nichols, who is the protagonist, who is clearly based on my dad, when he tells a story, and I put that in quotes, when he tells a story in the novel, it is 100% based on something I picked up from my dad. And he would tell this story about there was a young guy who was appointed to the State Athletic Commission in California, and all the guys who were longtime veterans of the boxing dodge didn't think this guy merited being appointed to this position of authority on the State Athletic Commission. So there was a fight one night where the two managers decided to play a trick on the guy just for fun. And they spoke beforehand, and the commission, this inspector for the commission is supposed to go to the dressing rooms before the fight to ensure that everybody is adhering to the rules and that the taping of the hands is legitimate and all this stuff. And they jokingly told the guy that one of the managers said, we will not fight unless there's an actual prohibition against the Swansea Hollow punch. And the other manager said, no, we want the Swansea Hollow punch to be part, and there is no such thing as this. These guys made it up just to kind of see if this guy would say, "What the hell are you talking about?" And of course, he didn't. He just said, "Under no circumstances will I allow the Swansea Hollow punch to be used in this contest." And of course, there was no such thing, and they were just pulling the guy's leg, and he fell into the trap, and that's. And my dad loved to tell that story, so that's why I put it in the book. So that was it. Thank you for that question, Jay and Connie. If people haven't read the novel, they have no idea what I'm talking about. But there are probably a dozen such things. Like there was one. Sorry, I'm going to do this now. There was one where a British boxing writer, was in Los Angeles to cover a fight, and he got so drunk the night before the fight that he passed out. And I make it the Billy Nichols character who does this, but it was somebody else. Had to file the guy's pre-fight story for him, and they were expecting a prediction from the guy. and they laughed, and all the other writers who weren't drunk and passed out said, let's embarrass them by calling it a draw. Because whoever predicts a draw in a fight, right? And so they filed the story for the guy while he was passed out. And of course, the fight ended in a draw. So the guy ended up, this silly Brit who was unconscious for the whole thing, ended up looking like a genius predicting a draw. That was another story that my dad loved to tell, that it made it into my novel. So there you go. Okay.
I just did want to tell you that I finally watched Who Killed Teddy Bear.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
This is a good way to go out. What are your observations about that sleazy movie?
It was surprisingly good. I didn't find it that like sleazy in a way. Like I felt that, like, cause I felt it all worked together really well, because it is sort of because it is a sort of about these like how like sexual trauma impacts people in this different way. So I thought it was kind of intelligent, like the cop that's like obsessed with all these cases, like listening to them on a recording at night, so his daughter can hear from the next room. I was like, Jesus Christ, she's going to need therapy.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
Sal Minio's character's background. I like Juliet Prowse calls the cop on that too. She says, what's going to happen when a guy brings her home and he wants to kiss her?
Yeah.
Thank you, Juliet. And then and I thought the woman that played Sal Minio's sister, that was an incredible performance. Like I thought that was a really good performance. And it was just really interesting, just all these people kind of coming together. And also, but I have to tell you, this isn't really a spoiler, because you kind of figure out early on that Sal Mineo is the one that's making the obscene calls. And you kind of get this feeling like things are going to escalate with him, just because that's kind of the nature of those things, which is carried out in true life. I just got obsessed with, well, if something happens to Sal Mineo, what's going to happen to his sister? Like that was like, because his sister is developmentally disabled because of a brain injury, and he takes care of her. And like the last third of the film, I was just had this low level like anxiety just about, but what happens to her? Like what happens to her? Because he was her caretaker and there isn't anyone else. So anyway, oddly, that's it. And I found the relationship between the two of them really moving, and I liked Sal Minio's character, that he just wasn't one thing. He wasn't just this guy making obscene phone calls. He's also someone that was sexually, was sexually abused by his caretaker, because that's what it is. He was really young, and then, like I said, I found it surprisingly intelligent. I think that was the thing that I wasn't expecting, was actually, I get you.
I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the movie has there's an impact there. The movie makes a really strong impact. And when I say it's sleazy, I mean, you know me well enough, Anne, to know that sleazy is not a negative in my book.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean any of that in a pejorative sense. I mean, the movie is really, really strong, like surprisingly strong for the time. And then a lot of what's so weird and compelling about it came out right at that time, that bridge between this is old Hollywood kind of stuff. You're seeing, people like Sal Mineo, who you're familiar with from Rebel Without a Cause, and, Six Bridges to Cross and all this stuff. And then it's like, wow, I can't believe that they're actually going there.
Yeah.
It's a really, really interesting movie that I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
But regardless of how intelligent it is, I still feel like I need to take a shower after watching that movie. It's so uncomfortable.
It's a very uncomfortable movie, and it's also sort of interesting because it was shot in New York, so there's really great location work. But also you're seeing where Times Square started to get really seedy. Like it's a
Yeah.
really interesting time in New York. It was so cool because that gets captured. And then it's also the perfect background, to what's going on in the story. So it's like the perfect setting and time period for that story. And you're right, it's that because it's that transition period too between sort of Hollywood and this more, lower budgeted kind of things that you weren't talking about before. I mean, there's so much packed in there of stuff people, it is like an explosion of all the stuff that people weren't talking about around sexual trauma and sexual violence. Yeah.
And it's weird because in some ways, have you seen movies by Andy Milligan?
I don't think so.
Look up Andy Milligan because Andy Milligan was a New York filmmaker who made really uh, weird, low budget, um, like sexploitation films. His first, I don't want to call it his breakthrough movie because it's not a breakthrough movie, but it was called Vapors, and it was like a gay bathhouse movie made in New York in the 60s. But then Andy Milligan made these really uncomfortable, creepy sexploitation films. And Who Killed Teddy Bear is like an Andy Milligan movie with known actors and performers.
Yeah.
And which is what makes it kind of weirdly uncomfortable. Like, wow, I've seen these, like, I've seen Jan Murray on the chat shows. I saw Juliette Prowse on variety shows. Elaine Stritch is like a Broadway legend, and Sal Mineo and all these great movies. And yet here they all are in this movie that is like an Andy Milligan film, for God's sakes. So there, I'm happy to turn you on to. I think I'm happy to turn you on to Andy Milligan.
I wrote it down.
He was quite the character. And there's a great biography of him called The Ghastly One, written by Jimmy McDonough. That is a kind of an incredible book. So, yeah. Well, I'll end with that. As Emily or Charlotte walks through.
Charlotte.
Charlotte does her walkthrough, her walk on. Yeah.
Her walk on part.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so did we talk about how people get the magazine, which is our true crime issue? How would they get it?
People would get the Noir City magazine by donating $20 or more to the Film Noir Foundation, and which you can do by going to filmnoirfoundation.org and going to the contribute section. Right, Charlotte? And donating $20 or more, but you also must sign up on our mailing list so that our buddy Ted can join those things and make sure that people get the digital edition of the Noir City magazine. You can also get the Noir City magazine on Amazon.com by just typing in Noir City and I guess my name. If I think Noir City, a bunch of annuals will come up as well. But you want to find the latest editions in print are also available through Amazon.com. I cannot tell you how much I think this issue is really fantastic. I just think everybody did a stellar job. So,
and also our new annual is now available on Amazon as well. We just released that. So, and that's a collection of essays from last year's Noir City magazine for people.
Absolutely. Yep.
Really pretty, beautiful cover by Michael Cronenberg.
Absolutely. So thank you, Anne. Thank you, Charlotte, for putting your butt right in the camera. That's you could get a career out of that. Very good.
I think it was the Who Killed Teddy Bear talk that got her feeling.
Could
like
be. I have no idea where Tizzy got off to, but at least you got to have a rare Tizzy sighting at the start of things. And also, I have to say, it was fun because in Detroit, that was the first time I had ever signed copies of the children's book, which had just come out, and it was great fun because as I had hoped. It was wonderful to be signing books for people's children and grandchildren and pets. I
Oh,
actually signed 3 or 4 of these books for someone's pet,
oh,
which I thought was great. And now I've taken to signing them as me and as Kitty Farrell. So we
oh.
have a little paw print, from Kitty, and it's yeah. Doesn't sound much like the noir guy talking, but it's you know obviously, Anne, we love our animals, and if people don't love animals, I think nothing of them. It's as simple as that. Okay.
Okay. So I guess so that wraps it up. Hopefully we'll be back in about 2 weeks. Ideally, we're trying to keep you know, keep on a regular basis so we can get out of March soon and get up to April.
Yes. So we'll be back again. We'll record another one of these in October, obviously, and then I'll have more stories to tell. It'll probably be after DC, after Noir City, DC. Maybe we'll record one before. Who knows?
Yeah, we might be able to get it done before.
Okay.
We'll try to do
All
that.
right.
But yeah, so we're really trying to hold firm on doing this on a regular basis so we can get a couple in every month and we can, get all your questions answered. And thank you for everybody for sending in questions. We do, like, when you sign up on our mailing list, you get our newsletter and our Ask Eddie announcements, and that's how we solicit questions for the show. So you need to sign up on our mailing list to be able to submit questions, because we when we announce and Ask Eddie, then we ask people to send in questions. So that's how you do it.
Perfect. Okay, Ann, I'm going to go cook some dinner, and thanks a million, and we will see you very soon.
Hey, we'll see y'all soon.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody. Good night.